Welcome everyone to this Let's Play of Kerbal Space Program 1.2.2, also known as Loud and Clear. Now in the previous episode we put this satellite into orbit around the Mun, and a fine satellite it is too. However, that completes our contract, so we need to pop back to Mission Control and speak to Gene to see if he has something else for us. Back at Mission Control, we have a category of contract called Bases and Stations, and it has rather a lot of contracts. Unfortunately, we can't do very many of them because our only space station exploded when its parts ran out of their warranty. So much for that. So it's about time we built another base, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up this Launch a Kerbin space station. It needs to include one docking port and to support 4 Kerbals. So it's relatively straightforward to be able to build. However, it must also have some power generation, either solar panels or other generators, and it must have a science lab and an optional cupola module. So that looks like the sort of space station I think we could knock together quite quickly. So let's pop over to the Science and Research Centre and see if there are any parts that we could make use of. Now, when building space stations, there is one particular part which is more useful than all the rest in my opinion, and that is this, the Clampetron Docking Port Senior. Because it's relatively large in size and fits all of the main sets of modules, you don't tend to have these rather weak and flexible joints between modules that you get with the much smaller Clampetron docking port. So that is a part that I want to pick up. But there is also a second version of that that's supplied with the USI construction parts, and that is the construction docking port. Now, we'll see how that works in a future episode maybe, but I think first things first, we need to pick up this particular version. This is the stock version of the Clampetron docking port Senior, and to do that, we first need to pick up composites, which contains a micro goo containment pod, amongst other things, and also the larger 3.75 meter stock fairing module. So we're going to collect this for 300 science points. We can then pick up this for 550, so we'll pick those up as well, and that leaves us with 816. Now, I don't know which group of parts I'm going to pick up. What have we got down here? Specialised electrics, which contain fuel cell arrays, the large battery bank, and the Big Brother stereo surveillance camera. Not particularly up for that. We have some robotic parts, including these much larger Communitron devices. We have this Mark II drone core and the CAL 9000 scriptable control system. Okay, well that might be quite useful for these larger Communitrons, but we're not really making use of them at the moment, so maybe we'll give that a miss. Advanced unmanned tech. I think this is the smaller of the remote guidance units, plus another Probodobodine Hex 2 core. What else have we got? We've got ion propulsion for small satellites. We'll leave that one, I think. Then we've got advanced motors, which is the larger ruggedized vehicular wheels, and Rovemax Model 3 XL3. Okay, well, we'll give that a miss. Airplane parts, well, we're kind of leaving those behind right now. So what else have we got? We've got advanced metalworks, winches, girder segments, the shielded Clampetron docking port, leave that. Large volume containment gives us these larger Cobodine S3 720 7200 tanks. So we've got some of these larger parts. Moving on up, We have nuclear engines for 300, and then up here we have some much larger engine units. So we've got these shuttle style engines and then these rhinos. Now the problem we have is that in order to use these much larger engines, we actually need large volume containment. And I don't think we've got enough, because we need 550 and we need 300. So that would be 850. We don't quite have enough. So that leaves us in a bit of a pickle, so to speak. So I'll tell you what, I think I'm going to hang on to my science points and head on over to the VAB and get cracking with actually building our space station. Right, well, let's begin by having a look down here at our contract, just double checking the parts that we need. Here we go, so let's get that up. We need a cupola module. Well, we can start with that, so that'll be our root part. We need a science lab. We need some form of generator, either solar panels or other form of generator. I assume that means things like fuel cells. I think we've got some of those. We'll probably use the solar panels. We've got to be able to support 4 Kerbals, so we need a habitat of some description, and I know which one of those we are going to use. And we must have at least 1 docking node. Well, that shouldn't be too difficult to knock up. Right, so let's begin with, where are we? No, not our Salamander command pod, rather nice as though it is. We're going to start with our PPD-12 cupola module. This is the stock cupola module, and we'll start right up here at the top. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put one of the smaller Clampotron docking ports up here, and I'm going to put it on a little extension using this modular girder adapter. So what I'm going to do is put that there, gives it a little bit of clearance. Now if we go for our Clampotron docking port, not the junior, the standard one, we could just drop that here on the top, but I don't like the way it looks. So what I think I'm going to do is use a couple of these round 8 toroidal tanks just to make a little sort of fitting up here at the top. That kind of fits in just a little bit better. So there is that. Now what I want to do, yes, we do have, there we go, we do have some of these fuel cells. So what we can do is we can take out the oxidizer from these little tanks up here at the top. So that's that one. Which one haven't we done? There we go. So let's get all of the oxidizer out. What I'm going to do is use these fuel cells. So if we get 4 of those, can't really clearly see where they're fitting. This bright colour is all very well. There we go. So that gives us our 4 fuel cells. So that's going to be some sort of generation for when we got night, when we were on the night side of Kerbin. That'll give us a little bit of electric generation if our batteries run out. And on that point, we probably need some batteries as well. So I don't know, these are going to be a bit too big. So should we use a couple of these just here underneath the fuel cells, like so? Probably not quite fitting very well. There we go. So let's try that. So that gives us our fuel cells and some batteries. Just get our indicator lights there, just sticking out the base of, well, just about touching the base there of our fuel cells. So that gives us a little bit of charge, a little bit of battery. We'll have more battery charge elsewhere, but let's just concentrate here at the cupola module. So next up, I think we will have a look at illuminators. So we've got the Illuminator Mark II. So let's, come on, there we go. Illuminator Mark II, which we will use up here on our, can we get that fitted? Right there we go. So we'll use that, not this way around. We'll reverse them. Come on, round you go. There we go. So that's that away. So this will give us a little bit of light for approaching craft to help docking. But I'm not going to leave them sticking out quite like that. We'll use the move tool and we'll just step them in a little. Let's go for, there we go for fine adjustment. Bring them down. Is that okay? Out a little. Perhaps like so. There we go. So that's what our approaching craft will see. So that looks okay. So that's the indicator light. So next up, if we go a little bit further down, I'm going to go and get, I think next we'll get, what am I looking for? Here we go, the Compo Max Radial Tubeless. Now we only need one of these on our craft. I'm going to turn it round, not that way round. There we go. So this is going to fit just like so. There we go. Does rather stick in. So let's just move it out just a little bit. There we go. So that should be okay. Next, let's get an antenna. We just get a small Communitron 16, which we'll use for short range communication. It's not attached, is it? Is it snapping? Let's get take snapping off and see if we can fit that. Perhaps like so. There we go. So that'll be our short range transmission aerial. So that's working rather well. We also need, where is it? It's in the science pack. We need one of our Kerbin engineering systems. Couldn't do without that either, and we will squeeze that on here. Now unfortunately, where are we? Let's snap. It rather embeds itself into the paintwork, so where else could we fit this? It doesn't kind of embed itself. Perhaps we will need to fit it elsewhere. We could fit it on the inside of here, but that doesn't look very neat. And that kind of looks slapped on. I'll tell you what, we'll come back to that. Next up, I think we'll get some panels. Now, I'm going to use, what are we going to do? We're going to use the, here we go, the Gigantor solar arrays. And I'm actually going to use 3 of these. There we go. So we'll use 3 fitted like so. I don't tend to use 2 because 2 can so easily find their way to be edge on to the sun and catch no light. So we'll use 3, and that looks pretty good. What I'm going to do here is we just have this is our Kerbin station. Let's get this saved. Kerbin station, there we go. Kerbin station, just get this saved for posterity. So that gives us our generation elements as well. We've got fuel cells and we've got these panels as well. Now the other parts that we needed was the lab. So if we type lab in here, there we go, we get the mobile processing lab, and I'll fit that underneath like so. So that gives us our lab. And I think these panels look rather natty just there because they won't obscure is the word, obscure I was looking for, the observation windows here we have on the lab. Now we also need a habitable module, a habitation module. Geez, let's get that out. Habitation module. So what I'm going to do is use the colonization module, which is the MKS Tundra habitation ring. So let's get that fitted. And here in the VAB we can actually deploy it. Now I make that distinction because rather like some of the panels, things don't always expand and contract in space under the same rules as they do in the VAB. Now in this case, in order to expand this wheel, we would need, I think it is material kits. So let's retract that. I think we actually need material kits in order to expand it. Let's just close that up. Let's have a look. Requires machinery to operate as a greenhouse. Doesn't for habitation. You can swap it between converters for this number of parts, but in order to expand it, here we go, in order to expand it we will need 46,000 material kits, so we're probably going to have to bring those up as a separate launch, and 4,000 electric charge. Whew. Okay, never mind, we will worry about that when the time comes. So this is going to be our basic station, but we still need some life support. So let's have a look. What have we got in ways of life support? Not much, it would appear. So let's have a look at the life support category and have a look at our life support tanks. There we go. So we've got a life support tank, should last us quite a while. This is the 2.5. Just remember which one I've got. 2.5. There we go. Life support 2.5. Carries 4,500 supplies. Excellent. So this is going to be our basic station. Let's have a just double check that we have our contract correct. We have Cupola, optional, but we've got one. We have a science lab. We can generate power. We can support at least 4 Kerbals, and we have at least 1 docking node. Okay, well that's fine, but this isn't going to go very far, and it's not yet finished. So what I'm going to do, get my Clampatron Senior, because we need one of those to go on the base here. So let's turn that around. So that's our base sorted out. So we've got a Clampatron Senior there at the bottom. But it wouldn't be much of a science lab if we didn't have many experiments. So let's see how many of these experiments we can cram on. So let's get 1 thermometer. We've got our micro... Oh no, that's our storage unit. That's kind of like a hard drive storage unit for experiments. What was I looking? Oh, we do need our Kerbal engineering unit. So let's get our Kerbal engineering unit on as well. Here we go, our Gravimex negative gravioli detector. So let's get that on there. We have a magnetometer boom. Oh, we're getting 3 of these. We're getting 3 of these. Let's put that part down for the moment. Let's pick this up and just get 1. We only need the 1. There we go. So pick them up and put them back down again. So let's go back to our science parts. Where are we? Science. There we go. Get the seismic accelerometer on. We've all got one of those. We're going to get our magnetometer boom, which we will put here just above the habitation ring. We do now have these micro goo containment modules, but for this I think I'm going to use the standard one. Where's the standard one gone? Where's the standard one? Oh, we have these modules. I've forgotten all about these. Never mind, we'll have to keep forgetting about them for the moment. Where is... Why can I not see it for looking? Goo. Ah, there we go. Our mystery goo containment unit. So let's get that... where should we put that? Let's put that down here. We're going to have a scientist on board, so they will be able to reset these experiments. There we go. Move them a bit further down so we can get a few more in just here to the right of the door. So go back to the science category. What else we got? We got one of those. Now this is a collect hydrogen. This is a surface module, so no much point in that one. That's a surface module as well. This is light reflected from a planet's surface across multiple wavelengths. Can only be used from high orbit. Well, we'll manage to be able to use that one. So I think I'm going to turn... Oh, not that way around. Let's turn it not that way around either, so it must be this way around. Let's just check its animation. There we go. So that animates like so. Staring straight at our habitation module, but never mind. Let's retract, and then yeah, it's retracting. Get that roughly level with the goo container next to it. Move that down as well. Excellent. So that is that. We've also got the multi-spectrum imaging platform. Can only be used in orbit. So let's get that placed here. Let's just check the animation. There we go. Excellent. Close that up. So that can only be used from orbit as well. We've got our survey scanner. We won't really be using the survey scanner on this device. But we do have the orbital telescope. So let's pick that out. And we can place that here. Now let's just opening the shutter this way. So it opens like so. Not much of an animation there, but let's try rotating it which way, not down. We'll have it rotate up like so, and just get that lined up like so. There we go. Is that good too? No, I think I was just checking whether that might clip into the orbital telescope when it opens. So that gets all of those science experiments connected up. What else do we have down here? I don't think we'll be using a submersible oceanography and bathymetry sensor thing. No, we won't be using that. Seismic sensor pod. 2 pods, variable distance away from the impact hammer. Won't be using that either, because I think this is another surface scanning module. Won't be using that. That's surface scanning. And then we have all of the variations in universal storage pods. So we won't be using any other science experiments. So that's crammed in our various science experiments, and we remember to use our Kerbin engineering system. So that's got that all sorted. So what next do we need? Well, we need some transmitters and communications dishes. So what are we going to use? Okay, well, we've got a variety of antenna. We're not really using these antenna in terms of their distance. We don't really need to cover a great distance here. We're going for Kerbin orbit, but this could be used as a station to relay. So we could use some of these other relay antennas. How big is this relay antenna? If we were to add this, perhaps, oh, it is rather large, isn't it? Could we perhaps, no, it's probably too large for this. Should we go down to this smaller size? I've got 3 of those as well. I forgot the, let's place this like so maybe. Let's just get one of these, and what I'll do, I think, is I will actually place this on this side. So that gives us a reasonable sized antenna for communicating within Kerbin's sphere of influence maybe. So we use one of those for that purpose, and it's clear of the solar panels as well, but we don't really have that much battery. I did say we were going to get some battery here, so let's go back to our battery section. Here we go, electrical. We could actually, of course, go for a nuclear reactor and try planting one of these. Let's just put it here for the moment. It is rather large. That would give our station considerable power. So one option is to bring that up as maybe a secondary module. That would be one option. But another option, just for the short term anyway, is just to spam, if you like, some of these battery packs. So let's use just single symmetry, and what we'll do is we'll just get a couple of these and just place them relatively symmetrically on this side. There we go, just place them here on this side. So that should give us some additional battery storage. We've got the fuel cells if we need them. Not much fuel up here in these toroidal tanks, but it'll do. So we've got some battery charge there. The problem is some of these experiments might actually take quite a lot of charge, and we've already mentioned how much charge this is going to take to expand. So that nuclear power unit may well prove useful. The other possibility, of course, is that some of these modules will contain charge as well. There we go. We've got 1,000 electric charge just inside the habitat, though I expect it has to be expanded before that charge becomes available, but we'll worry about that a little bit later. So what else do we need? We probably don't need very much else just for the basic core of the station, because this would complete our contract if we could get it launched. So that's our next challenge. Okay, fine. So let's just save that and then pop down here to, let's just pop that away. We don't need that now, not least for the moment. And we need another one of these Clampatron seniors. And if you look very closely, they do have handles and they do have these little lights on them that will light up to show you they're aligned. So one of the things we could do is just, is that rotated? There we go. Just rotate them so they neatly line up. Not essential, but good enough. Next we need something to bring this up with, and we don't have the large round control pods anymore. Some of these Probodyne, the larger Probodynes. So what I'm going to do is my usual payload. Here we go. Is this payload? I'm going to use my usual service bay trick, and I'm going to put my parts here inside the service bay. So what we're going to do is we can use that one. Anyone will do. Nice small probe core. So that's going to be the probe core we are using to control our vessel. We will also need one of the very small, if we're going to launch this uncrewed, we would need one of the antenna. Now it's not actually the launch phase that I'm thinking about here. It's actually, oops, can't spell antenna. It's actually the disposal phase, the phase that we dispose of this lower section, or at least try and retrieve it back down to Kerbin. So I'm going to put one of these very small Communitron 16S's inside the bay here, so that will allow us to control the pod on its return. We'll also need, where's the electrical category gone? Here we go, electrical. We'll also put a battery in here as well, just to give us enough charge to maintain our control, because if we run out of charge, that's no good to anyone. Since we'll be recovering this, I'll just add another one in case we end up recovering on the dark side. So that should be enough for our sort of cobbled together round 2.5 meter pod. Now we need something to get it into space, and we're going to need sort of 3,000-4,000 delta V. 3,500 delta V is the typical amount you need to just get into a standard orbit. We're going to need a bit more than that because we have to get up to 250,000. We don't have to do that all in one go, because we could assemble the whole thing in low Kerbin orbit and then bring it up to 250. Oh, it says below 250. Oh, God, I really should read these things. Okay, below 250, that's fine. Okay, well, if we've got to go below, what we should then do, I think, if we just get our, where are we? There we go, our advanced reaction wheel, then our orange tank, then, what's the biggest engine we have? Here we go, a nice mainsail. That's going to give us plenty of thrust to weight ratio, but only about 2,000 delta V. So it's not thrust to weight ratio we really need, it's fuel. So we need extra fuel. So we could just go for long, but I'm not too keen on long rockets. They become very unstable and difficult to manage. So I think we'll go for, where is our, here we go, coupling. There we go. We're going to go for our radial decouplers. Let's have 2 of those, and I'm going to use the editor extensions. I think it's the V command. Hover over the part, let's close that away, and hit V, and it will center your decouplers in this case. And then I'm going to go for, what should we have? Should we have another set of orange tanks? Let's have another set of orange tanks. There we go. And again, hover over your part and hit V, and they will center. Now, if we don't need the extra delta, if we don't need the extra thrust to weight ratio, why don't we go for skipper engines? A little bit more efficient. 320 in vacuum against 310, and 280 at sea level instead of 285. It's not actually that much in it, but we'll go for the skippers anyway. So let's get 2 sets of skippers on there. So we've now got almost 4,000, but we're not done yet. We are not done because we still have to get our asparagus fuel lines in. So let's go. There we go. So they should have snapped into place. Yes, they did. We're going to go for, I say a little bit of aerodynamic efficiency. We could either add, there we go, we could either add these parts, which I find don't quite fit. Just not quite fit. But we'll go for those anyway. And they also contain a little bit of fuel as well. So that's always good. So let's go for some chutes to go on the top. There we go. And do our usual adjustment for, there we go, 0.4. Minimum pressure for popping the chutes for chute recovery. Okay, so that's giving us 3.9, and we oh dear, oh dear, that's because we haven't got our staging right. I was going to say we didn't have quite as much thrust to weight ratio as I expected, but there we go. It's now now 1.17. That's not quite enough, is it? So let's go back to our mainsail engine. There we go. 0.77 because it's in the wrong stage. There we go. 1.7. That's perfect. 3,700 delta V. But remember, most of that will be in the atmosphere, and that's what I've got Kerbin Engineer set to. 4,150 out of the atmosphere. Still going to be a little bit short, I think. But let's make do. Now, there is one thing that's missing here, which might spoil the show. And that is I haven't got a fairing. Who spotted I haven't got a fairing? Okay, so let's take these off. Because we need to fit the fairing first. And what I'm going to do is fit the fairing from here. So let's go to payload. Not quite sure why it's under payload, but it is. And let's pop that on there. And then just let's have a look. Get our... Come on. Oh, there we go. Place cross section. Up we go. Not quite fitting. There we go. And then close the fairing. So that's going to be our fairings. Let's pop this back on. And as you can see, I don't think those large fueled adapters will work. So we'll go for the much smaller adapters, or at least the lower profile adapters. We've used these before, so we'll pop those on the top and then go back to our chutes. Let's change the pressure and then just rearrange our staging. There we go. So that gives us 3.5. Now that probably would get us into orbit, but not much else. So we've got a choice here, and that choice is to get another set of asparagus staging, or go to, let's have a look, go to these larger twin bore liquid fuel boosters. Now they've got, let's have a look, they have got liquid fuel 2880. These have got the same amount of fuel, so going to those doesn't really help, but they would give perhaps a little more thrust. They don't really help. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I think we'll just go for another standard asparagus stage. So So let's have a look. Coupling. There we go, coupling, that's what I wanted. So we just slap those on, go V, get them nicely lined up. Let's go back to orange fuel tanks. V, get those nicely lined up. And what I will do, I think, is I will alt-click our top there. And I will sort out the staging in a minute. So that gets those sorted. We'll alt-click and get our engines. And finally, we need some fuel lines. So let's get these fuel lines popped in like so. It's a little bit ugly, but it does the trick. Okay, so let's get our staging sorted out. So these are going to be the first stages to go, and those are the first parachutes to go. So those must be second, and then we've got our fairing there at the top. Okay, that's fine. We've now got 4,500. That's going to be way enough. That's going to be absolutely perfect. So let's go now for some aerodynamic fins, and we'll go for the AVR8 winglets. Let's get 4 of those, not 5, 4, and we'll get those put in here at the bottom. But I also think we should have some liquid fuel, there we go, these Werner engines. And the reason I'm going to include these Werner engines is manoeuvring this rather large central section could be pretty difficult just with the control wheels. So let's get those put in place there, and again I'll center those using the V key. Let's get those in there, and we'll do the same down here at the bottom. So that's 2 of those, and then don't really fit there, do they? Because they've got that sort of attachment. So let's put them a little higher up, and we'll move this one a little higher up as well. Put them, there we go, put them there on that ring, perhaps just touching that band. These problems probably need to go up. That's my OCD talking. There we go. So that gets some RCS, or at least Werner engine control. They use liquid fuel and a smidgen of oxidizer as well to control orientation. So that'll give it a little more control when we are launched. Now my only other concern is whether this joint will be strong enough. But you see, there's not that sort of V shape when you're using the much smaller Clampetron docking port. So this is a much stronger and much better fitting pair of docking ports, which is why I prefer using those for building stations. Okay, next up, let's get these launch stability enhancers attached. There we go, and we can use V on those as well. So let's plant these here and get those positioned, get them right in staging as well, and just give that a save. So this is going to be our Kerbin station. We have, just one of the things I want to check is make sure we've got all the right piping in place. If we've got 2 of these fuel ducts and not just the one, that's a common mistake that I make all the time. Right, okay, this is looking pretty darn good. Oh, too low. Let's get that set. Save that again. Okay, so we have our parachutes, and they are all set at 4, and they're set in pairs, so I don't need to check all of them, but I will. So that should allow chute recovery to recover our outer stages, but I note I don't have any chutes on our inner stage. So let's go and get some radial mount parachutes on our inner stage. And how many of those should we have? 6. And we'll try 8. Oops. Just under the Werner engines there, because we are going to try and recover these. So let's make sure I've got chutes here on this section as well. So Where do those chutes go? There's the 8. We'll put them in a stage of their own up here in the top, because we'll use that on our return of that section. There we go. So save again. Don't need power on these outer sections because we'll just use gravity to bring those down. We've got power, we've got a little antenna inside of here, we've got a probe core, we've got parachutes, the Verna engines, we've got the fins here at the bottom, so that's the bottom stage sorted. We have some supplies, we have our tundra habitation ring, which we will separately need to expand. We have our various experiments on our lab. We also have here observation. I didn't realise these were observation windows, but they do light up when you put the lights on, so they'll do for observation windows. Now around the back here we have one large transmitter, 4 batteries, and our Kerbin engineering system. Moving on up, we have Gigantor solar arrays for generation. We have our optional but necessary cupola module, and right up here at the top we have fuel cells, a little bit of fuel to drive those fuel cells, tiny little batteries just for emergencies, and our standard size Clampotron docking port, which will be there for sort of smaller craft to dock with, and lights, which reminds me we don't have any lights down here at the bottom to light up this docking port, and we just generally don't have any surface lights either. That's no good. So let's go back to our illuminators. What else have we got? We've just got these 2 illuminator types, so let's take these and just use those right down here. Let's get 4, get them right down here. There we go. So that's our 4 that will light up that section. I'm just going to move them in again because I don't like them sort of sticking out on their little... Oops, too far. There we go, just pressing C. Just like them kind of slightly snug and then maybe rotated round. So let's get them... There we go. Is that... Go back to place. Yeah. There we go. So that gives some light there, just lighting the approach. But we don't have any lights. Do we have any surface lights? I don't think there's a category for it, but there's electrical. What's lighting under? Utility, I guess. What do we have? We have these little indicator lights from Blinken Lighten, or Blinken Lights. So these are these little sort of... what do we do? Let's have every 22.5 degrees. Let's go back to just one light, and what we can do is just plant them. I wonder if that's interesting. I wonder if a Kerbal can walk over these lights. Soon find out. So let's put one underneath as well, and we'll do that here. So that'll just illuminate that entrance to the lab, and we'll do the same here as well. Could have done them in pairs really, couldn't we? Never mind. So that will illuminate that entrance. Perhaps put them on either side. Can I pick one up? They seem to... Yeah, they see the cupola's actual attachment point is beneath the metalwork. So what else are we going to try? Can we... Maybe just here. See if I can get that to line up. There we go. So that'll give just a little indication of where that entry point is. Doesn't really light up the whole craft, but we do have these windows to light up the craft here. Won't bother with one of the lights there, and we have the lights up here at the top for that Clampotron. So do you know what? I think this is pretty much ready to go. So let's save that. Just double check the staging. There's where our shell will be released. We'll replace that when we need to. We've got, let's just double check. I know I've checked this once, but I'm going to check it again. We've got, this will go second, and these will go first with their matching decouplers. Perfect. And we've got, this is a mistake I make as well, getting the launch stability enhancers in their own stage here at the bottom, but we've got that sorted this time here with the engines. Well, do you know what? I think that makes a pretty good Kerbin space station, or at least the first part of a Kerbin space station. So with that said, I would like to thank you for watching, and in the next episode we'll put this into space. See you soon. Bye-bye.